Okay, so we are ready to get started. Welcome to today's discussion, Finding Your Hidden Sales Team, a customer advocacy webinar. This discussion is about the fact that your customers, when happy and inspired, can do an incredible amount of work to help grow your business. So we're tapping two experts in this field to help explain how you can make this happen for your company. This is an executive's dream, right? Having raving fans, not on your payroll, that do your selling for you. We need to learn how to operationalize this. And I am really excited about the panelists that we have with us today. We're going to be joined by two experts in building advocacy programs, Andrew Stapleton, Vice President of Customer Success at G2 Crowd, and Will Crocker, VP of Customer and Partner Marketing at Braze. It's going to be a really good discussion, and we're going to learn a lot about advocacy. What is it, and how do you know when you have it? Measuring your customer experience so you can identify where and how to focus your advocacy efforts, how you can track your advocacy program, ideas for delivering unexpected delight to customers that will turn them into advocates, and lastly, how you can convince leadership to invest in your advocacy program. So before we jump in, a few housekeeping items. The webinar is going to be recorded. We'll send out the slides and the recording after the webinar is over. We will do a few polls during the session, and we encourage everybody to participate because we're going to share the results of those polls out. And lastly, if you have a question, feel free to type it into the question box to the presenter myself. I'll do my best to inject those questions during the discussion if it makes sense, or we'll address them at the end. Okay, so we're going to kick off with a quick poll question to get us started. My company invests in an advocacy program and has a comprehensive program. We're going to take 30 to 45 seconds to give everybody a chance to answer, and then we'll introduce our panelists. Okay, we're back. So just a quick note on myself. My name is Dan Bonet. I'm Chief Revenue Officer here at UserIQ. At UserIQ, we offer a platform that helps businesses realize higher value through their customer success teams, equipping them with product data, customer insights, and user engagement tools needed to fight churn and grow their accounts. I'll be facilitating the discussion today. Next up, we have Will Crocker. Will, do you mind taking a few minutes to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're doing at Braze?
Sure, yeah. I'm Will Crocker. I run customer and partner marketing at Braze. Previously ran customer success for Braze. Started out around 7 years ago, the company helping our customers use our customer engagement software to better engage their users across a wide variety of channels, emails, push notifications, SMS, and more. And now transition to actually using those same sort of approaches and best practices to better engage our own customers and to really help build our advocacy network at Braze. Other than that, I'm a huge Red Sox fan. So if anybody wants to talk about how this year has been really rough, you can catch me after that.
All right, sounds good. Nice to have you with us, Will. All right, next up we have Andrew Stapleton. Andrew, do you mind taking a few minutes to tell us a little bit about you and what you have going on at G2 Crowd?
Sure, Dan. Thanks. I've been in tech for 11 years. I've had the opportunity to build or rebuild customer success teams at 3 different startups so far. And here at G2, our team consists of our CSMs, our implementation, our support team, and then pre-sales. And it's all their job to just do great discovery into the marketers that they get to talk to every day, better understand their goals, and then better understand how the voice of their customer and the data that comes from that G2 provides can help them reach their potential as a company. I'm a Phillies fan. We just had a little clash against Will in Boston, and we got 3 little kids here at home with another one on the way, which makes work from home just as interesting as you would imagine. So
awesome. All right. Well, Andrew, thanks for that, and nice to have you here with us. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the discussion. First, let's level set and define advocacy. Right? Everybody has happy customers, references, friends of the family, of your business, but advocacy seems to mean much more than that. So maybe let's take a couple minutes and clearly define what advocacy is. Will, would you lead us off with this one?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think it really helps to take a step back and think about when somebody buys your software or somebody uses your software, they're usually doing that to meaningfully transform a piece of their business. And in doing so, I think those people are really hoping to transform their careers by doing so. If you're a marketing expert at a company and you come in and you say, we need a personalized approach to marketing, we need to make sure we're making every single push notification we send relevant and tying that into your email strategy and tying that into your SMS strategy like our customers at Braze do. They're looking to meaningfully change the way those brands actually connect with their customers. And that's something that's obviously going to be successful and drive that and kind of increase engagement, increase retention, that can make or break someone's career at one of these kind of companies. And so I think what we see is customers time and time again have been able to do that and be successful with our software. And they pay that back to us, many-fold through references. They come back to us and will provide case studies. Honestly, we just get a lot of anecdotal notes from our customers that actually help with internal company morale a lot too. It's not for nothing getting a note from them saying that, you made this work for me when I didn't think it was possible before with the existing software. It really has a powerful effect on our company as well. And I think what we've been really working on now is taking those advocates and building them into a network where they can build upon themselves and talk to each other and really explore what's the next step and how they can continue to drive, for us is customer engagement further, but drive their careers further in customer engagement.
Right, that makes sense. That's really interesting. Andrew, how do you guys think about it at G2?
Yeah. I love Will's point. I was actually talking to a customer yesterday who came from another G2 customer. He complimented the folks that he got to work with, and then said as soon as I got to my new shop, I wanted to engage with G2, which made my day. I think that's a big part of it. My answer is I used to think it was NPS, like back when I started doing this every day. I used to think that, like, okay, if you've got someone who says that they will promote you, that means that, like, if they're in a conversation, they'd sooner bring you up out of nowhere and say how great G2 or Braze or user IQ is than if they were a detractor, which means they would sooner bring up how much they don't like you, and then if they're neutral, then they won't say anything, right? But now, of course, being at a review company, I think if you've got a customer advocate, they have to have an opinion that that is strong, right? That has to do with their own experience, their own level of experience. Like if a Braze user, says, I love Braze and I just took my first admin training today, like, okay, you can assign a value to that. But if you've got someone who's, like in your example, Will, gone to multiple companies, implemented it multiple times, has helped other people to implement it, and this is what I think the critical part is, they go so far as to post that online for everyone to see, and they identify themselves as the author. Obviously, I'm talking about reviews here. That is awesome, and that's part of the reason why I love working here at G2, is because I get to help all of our customers and not our non-customers, right, our prospects, take all that advocacy, all that voice of the customer, and get it out there for everyone to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Andrew. That's interesting. So I did have a follow-on question to this, because when I think about you started out by saying, hey, I used to look at NPS, and that was the signal that I got that said, I think we have an advocate here. And now you've got like another signal that says, hey, did they write a review? And so you've got people that are willing to take the time and energy to do that. You can say, okay, I've got an advocate there. So I'm thinking bigger now, right? It's like, how do you identify, you've got many customers, hundreds or thousands of customers, and within those customers, you've got thousands more users, right? How do you identify the individuals within those companies that have the ability to be an advocate or the willingness? Like, what signals do you guys look for? You mentioned a couple of them already, but what else comes to mind as you pull all that data together and say, okay, here's a possible advocate, let's go nurture them? Andrew, do you want to lead us off with this one?
Sure. I think you probably want to look at how engaged are they and how happy are they, and so what are ways to do that? I mentioned NPS. I didn't mean to say that that's not an effective thing. I just mean that it's a tool appropriate for some jobs and not for others. I think NPS give you another satisfaction surveys. They're going to help me understand, like, okay, this subset of my customer base, here's generally how happy they are. But then I also want to know, how engaged are they? What has been their experience with G2, with Braze, with User IQ? And what I work with our customers a lot on this point is go to your product team and understand what your capabilities are around measuring this engagement. Like, can you measure logins on your tool? Can you measure clicks? Are there different features that you can have, like red, yellow, green light? Are they using this or not? Because when you can then take the cross section of, these are super engaged users that log in 3 times a day, that send 7,000 emails a day, and then here are the customers that are really happy, that intersection, I think that's how you can programmatically find them.
Got it. Thanks for that. Will, would you add anything to that? How do you guys think about doing this at Braze?
I think, to build off on what Andrew said, that NPS is definitely part of the story. NPS, I think, is kind of usually the beginning of the conversation, not the end of the conversation. When you get, a 9 or a 10, or even sometimes, some people think 8s are really good, even though that's passive to all of us who think about NPS. Those individuals, those are people that oftentimes we kind of approach them with our program, what we call Braze Firebrands, which essentially is our advocacy network, really to kind of approach them about what we can give back to them. We tell them about, how we can connect them to more people in their professional network, how oftentimes, we can help them build their personal brand, get their company brand out there, and really kind of help build that narrative for them in their career about them being an expert in customer engagement, because that's the work they're doing every day, and we just want to amplify that. And then once we start having that conversation with them through this program, it starts to come out and say, like, yes, I am willing to do a case study. Yes, I am willing to be a sales reference, or I am willing to put a review on G2 Crowd, or and the kind of litany of different customer advocacy activities that are out there, becomes apparent. And some of them just want to be an advocate for us informally too, and just say, I want to connect with other people in my network, and maybe if you're at a conference, they'll tap you on the shoulder and make the right introduction as well. But that's great too. So long as we're keeping that kind of positive energy in the market about our solution, having that program where people can actually hand raise for themselves and say, like, yes, I do want to do these sorts of things, and talk to our team around, like, I'm an email marketing expert versus a push notification expert. That sort of insight is really valuable, and that's something where we actually decided to have someone own that at Braze, and have someone who's kind of a customer advocacy manager, if you will, to manage that advocacy program and kind of keep that Rolodex of all of our advocates and build that network at Braze and connect them to one another.
You guys, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll just add, we're trying to kind of break into that idea too. I love the Firebrand idea. One of the things that we've started on G2, like, if you go and look at a product in their reviews, we've created a discussion space. It's kind of like a forum,
Cool.
So it's interesting because you'll see people having discussions around anything that has to do with the tool or the company, like it could be if a company is in news for one reason, they're talking about that, or it could be, what's the best practice if I'm on this screen? How do I reach this audience with this tool? But the interesting thing is that people are only getting there if they're, like, reading reviews about your product. So it's like an advocate. It's like an advocacy, audience, but in the buying cycle, which we think is going to be pretty helpful.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I did have a follow-up question for you, Will, on what you were talking about there. So when you identify somebody early in the process, and you're like, maybe it starts out with they gave you a really great NPS, and then you look at some of their data and you're like, okay, hey, this person could be an advocate. We want to engage with them and plug them into our Fire network and all of those things. Like, does that get assigned to somebody, and is it tracked? Are those type of things tracked, as in like how many of those people can we actually get to become advocates?
So there's two ways that we get people introduced to the advocacy program. One of them is essentially inbound. We have, when somebody sends a 9 or 10 for us on NPS, we automatically say, hey, you should check out the Braze Firebrands program at braze.com/firebrands, where they can sign up. On the other hand, customer success managers who are, having calls with their customer book of business all the time are also proactively making introductions to us and our team to have those kind of advocacy interviews and to induct them into the Firebrands program, to kind of say, hey, these are the points you should actually be going after, because they're the ones who really love our software and are movers and shakers of the industry. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach.
Perfect. That's helpful. Thank you. Okay, let's go on to our next topic. So when I think about finding advocates, part of me thinks like, hey, like your advocates are going to be the ones that, have clearly seen a real ROI or value from your solution that has been demonstrated, right? There's a mindset that some people think like usage equates to advocacy, but we know that can be misleading. So how do you guys go through the process of saying, let's identify the customers that we know they've received value. And how do you do that? How do you guys find it? Is it interactions with their CSM? Is it through QBRs or something like that? But that sometimes doesn't scale. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around not just the people that are happy because maybe they like your brand, they like the company, but also the ones that they've received value and they can go out and talk about it. How do you ascertain that? Andrew, maybe you can kick this one off.
Sure. This has been on my mind a ton lately as I'm just thinking about how do we drive ROI for our customers. And I think there's two levels. I think there's the ROI that the founders of your company thought they would provide, to the most possible people, and then I think the other level is what exactly does your customer want to get out of it? I know that sounds simple, but I'm thinking a lot about how we create mutual success plans for our customers when they're not even customers yet. And part of that is, what are the goals that you, Dan, that you will want to get to or get closer to by working with us at G2? And it could be, I'm talking to seed round startup and their goal is just nobody knows who we are. We have no brand recognition. And so I want to get 100 reviews, and that could be it. Whereas we might be thinking like, I want to sell you some intent data so you can better target, your prospects. But that would be a misalignment because they're telling us like, well, no one even knows us. We're not at that step yet, But that's kind of what I'm thinking a lot is one of the answers here is like, okay, let's have our value prop down, every point of it that we can go to. But then let's try to surpass that by having great discovery with our prospect or our customer to understand exactly like what are your SMART goals that you want to achieve that'll make, that will make you an advocate of us.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you, Andrew. Will, how do you guys approach this at Braze? And any examples you can share as well would be fantastic.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think it's certainly challenging, but we have a lot of kind of natural born advantages at Braze that we try to leverage in this. One of them is that since we're a marketing automation platform, we have a lot of data around how our customers are engaging their consumers. And so we're able to see when people are getting high engagement rates and things like that. That doesn't always necessarily translate one-to-one to revenue. And that's where I think we have to have those deeper conversations with our customers. But it's a good starting point to start to figure out. So I think having that robust view of your own customer base and understanding the analytics of how they're using your product and how they're using that to affect those outcomes is important. But I think beyond that, we also do things like, for example, we have a customer success team that has a fairly high touch model of engagement with our customers. And that's another thing that we have the luxury of doing because our software is, not cheap. It's something where we're an enterprise software solution. And with that, we are able to give a high touch level of service. But from that, we get a lot of real, directly from the customer insight about, how they're getting value out of the software. The last thing I would say is, we've done a lot of good correlation analysis between metrics like NPS, whether or not they're in the Firebrands program or advocacy program, and understanding how that affects outcomes like churn. And I can understand automatically, when we get more than a couple people in these programs, that's something that's going to make them sticky. That's going to make them want to stick around more often. There might be some cause and effect, lack of causality there. Maybe it's just correlation, but all these things taken together show a lot of value that they're getting out of it.
Yeah. Can these things be scaled? Because you mentioned you have a lot of enterprise customers, and so surely you have, a CSM that you can assign to those to go through the goal setting and the planning, and ultimately, every quarter do a QBR and validate that they've received the benefits that they were after, which, if they have, put them in a good position to potentially be an advocate. But I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that might be in SMB, and sometimes you can't scale your CS team to cover and have conversations with all of those SMB customers, but you still want to know, hey, are people getting the value from our services? And so how would you approach that if you were in that world? Will, maybe you can take this one first.
Sure, it's definitely more challenging at the SMB scale. We service SMB's customers as well, and understanding these anecdotes is definitely more difficult. I think that's where some of the marketing automation that we rely on, making sure that we have timely educational messages and timely NPS messages that actually get feedback from our customer on a regular basis, and using that automation to get that feedback at scale is very important. We have a product board sort of is a tool that we use to have a public portal for our roadmap as well. Getting all these insights from these scale customers is very important to us, but it's certainly harder without that CSM relationship that's doing that, executive business review every quarter, sitting down in a room with these folks, or at least on a Zoom nowadays. That's hard, but
yeah. So it's a tough one. Andrew, do you got any secrets for us on this one?
I mean, one thing I'll tell you that we're working on doing right now is I'm working with our sales leaders to build in just to our first call deck, right? Everyone's got a first call deck for someone who hasn't heard of you before. Just a few slides that have this concept of a mutual success program in them. And one of the first questions is, what do you want to do? What are the goals that you're trying to get? I think if we can do that, it is a manual process, but it's probably the most reliable manual process in the sales world, right? Everyone knows their first call deck. I think if you can start building that on the first call with your customer, so you understand exactly what you need to hit to make them happy, if you can systematize that, then you know how to get their ROI. And then I think when it comes to how do you scale it, Dan, to your point, then you've got the things that that you can measure, like we can measure reviews, Braze, you can measure logins, I'm sure, if it comes down to some simple distilled measures like that, then cool, right? Then right away that section of customers that are measuring those simple things, how successful or not successful are they? And then I think when it comes to the ones with more complex use cases, which almost necessarily becomes the enterprise customers, that's where you've got your best CSMs leading QBRs, right? And those QBRs have to say, like, this is what we understand your use cases. These are what we understand your goals are. And they're crazy complex goals. Here's how we're doing, and here's how we recommend that we combine resources to do even better. That's what I'm coaching our enterprise CSMs to do.
Yeah, building on what Andrew said, I will say that it's really important to have that understanding of what causes early, and if you talk about that first call deck, what happens right at the beginning of a customer interaction to drive retention and drive value for them, because that's even something that for our SMB businesses, we don't have CSMs that are working with them throughout the entirety of their customer relationship, but we do make sure we actually onboard every customer. And it's precisely because of those kind of findings that we've had around what makes a difference in that first 90 days for getting them off on the right foot, that we make sure we focus on that part of the life cycle, because it has outsized impacts on what you're going to see for retention and value they're getting out of the program 12 months, 18 months later.
Yeah, awesome. That's super, really, really helpful. Andrew, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'll add one more interesting example of something that we're doing. Now, it's not exactly the value of your customers, but if you can predict if a customer is going to renew or not, that's going to have some tie-in, to if the customer is finding value. Because they're not finding value, they won't renew. Our CSM leader, his name's also Andrew Ledette, he got together with someone in our research department, and all on their own, they ran this really interesting statistical analysis across like 50 different data points that you can measure on one of our customers. And what they came through with was like the top 15 list of these are the most predictive. They looked at 2 years of renewal data. And I thought that was really neat. And I think that anyone who's got that kind of data should do the same thing, because I now know that one of the most predictive things for us is if a customer, so we, in a normal contract, we provide a certain amount of gift cards for you to incentivize your reviewers to take the time, because it takes time to fill out a review. If anyone ever buys another round of gift cards, that is hugely impactful, and if they're going to renew. So whenever I see one of those orders come through, it makes me so happy, because it's like, oh, I know that they're experiencing value by the data, and that value is going to drive our own renewals.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. We do have a question on this topic, so I'm gonna read it out, and let's see if we can address it, and then we'll move into our next topic here. Any suggestions for keeping engagement after the sale during onboarding? Andrew, why don't you lead us off with this one, and then we'll add to it.
I think the more that you can show the customer return in the first month, the better. I think that would be my number one answer, because a customer is, my argument is customer is the most excited when they sign, when everyone finds out I'm getting a new tool, I'm getting a new service, I'm getting a new. If you do nothing, it's going to go like this, But if in the first 30 days you can pop your head up and say like, look, this is, we haven't helped you close $1 million yet, but we did do this. Stay tuned, for next month, because especially marketers buy hundreds of, pieces of software, pieces of data every year. You have to stay relevant. You have to stay engaged.
So if I'm hearing what you're saying, Will, I do want to hear your opinion on this, but I want to reiterate that, because I think that's a really good point. Reinforce back to the customer the accomplishments during that first part of the onboarding process to keep their energy levels high and their excitement about this new tool. Is that what I heard you say, Andrew?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'll completely agree with that. And I'll also say that, identifying the first few items that really get your customer over the finish line, that kind of initial value moment for customers. If you can understand what the precursor actions are to that they're going to take in the first 30 days, building out really good automated, messaging within your product and, around the product experience is also really helpful for our customers. It's been transformative for us to focus on, 2 or 3 key interactions and think about, what do we need to be doing in terms of showing them the value of those? What do we need to be doing in terms of adding tooltip messaging in our product to make that more intuitive to how to get to those ends and to get to those goals? And that's really helped accelerate our time to value quite a bit.
Perfect. Thank you guys for addressing that question. Okay, so we have another quick poll that we're going to do. My company measures the results of our advocacy program appropriately. Would love to hear what the audience thinks about this one. We're going to take 30 seconds to let everybody answer. Okay, perfect. We're back. Thanks for all the responses. So the next topic, I I look at this one and I'm like, this is a really hard thing to do, right? As we've talked, advocacy results in all kinds of cool stuff: reviews, references, customer stories, willingness to participate in your events and things like that. Those things you can easily track, right? There's a lot of things that are happening offline that must be much harder to know are going on, and certainly how do you track those things? But you want to know about them because they're affecting buying decisions, they're affecting your reputation and whatnot. So the question is, what is some of the data that you look at that is, let's say, not as easy or intuitive to get a hold of or to track? Will, how do you incorporate stuff into your program?
This is tough. I mean, I certainly think it's something where we get a lot of anecdotal data about what's happening offline. I mean, we understand feedback from our sales team and from our marketing teams when we're at, boots on the ground events and industry events, the kind of love that we're getting from our customers when they introduce us to more prospects and, saying, oh, I just met so-and-so from this brand over here. I've been talking about how we run our customer engagement strategy. You should come on over and, have a drink with us. And that kind of interaction we see happening constantly. But to your point, no one's necessarily writing down the specific contacts of who made what introduction, and certainly not in a way that we can, load it into Salesforce in an easy way. But we're kind of feeling the value out of that. Something I've struggled with a lot is whether or not we actually want to create a formal customer reference program. Because to me, it almost, and I'd be curious to understand what you all think about this. Sometimes it almost feels like it's commoditizing our relationship too much. It makes it feel a little bit icky to say, oh, if you actually bring us a brand that becomes close won, we're going to give you a $500 Amazon gift card. That's also not really what I want our true customer advocacy to be about. It's one of the things that it's interesting because it would help us track that kind of offline interaction, but it might come with a cost too. So maybe some brands can pull that off, but we haven't found our niche about how to do that quite yet at Braze.
Okay. Maybe Andrew has all the answers, so let's turn it over to him and see what he thinks.
I do. Thanks for coming to me. So I think when it comes to tracking customer advocacy, I think of it on two different scales, right? Because if you're thinking of a potential advocate for you, they're generating an opinion on you by some kind of interaction with your brand, right? And then the question is like, have they reached the point where they can expose that opinion in a measurable way? So they've reached that point if they have filled out a survey or an NPS or they've written a review, but that's probably like a pretty small universe of those contacts that have done that. And then you've got the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who interacted with your brand and have that opinion. And even if you can't extract it from them, you can still watch their behaviors. And I think about, G2 does this, but there are other companies that do buyer intent. I think about Bombora, who can look at the aggregate of different articles that your potential advocates or your actual advocates are reading, and you can understand, okay, if they're surging reading a certain topic, what does that mean for this person, for this company? With G2, if this company is reading our reviews, or if they're comparing us against our top competitor, what does that mean? If they come to read our reviews because they typed in Google alternatives of competitor, now I can start to make some judgments about this population. Now I can target them further and bring them kind of like up the advocacy curve. That's one thought. With Will's point about a reference program, I built that at our last company, and it was okay. I definitely think it closed some deals for us, but I also had my top reference and good friend come to me at our user conference. I remember very, very vividly, and she said, I can't do another reference for you guys. Do you have anyone else? Because she was the most popular. I wanted her.
Yeah, of course.
We also started to see, though, the behavior, the response of our prospects changed, and they were just like, you're giving me a prefabricated performance here in this reference. Obviously everything I say is going to come back to reviews, but they're going to go do their own shopping because they want to read your bad reviews. They want to know what they're getting into, and your reference is never going to say those things. Dan wanted us to That's my fight to you, Will.
Yeah, that makes sense. And to that point too about actually providing references, that's one of the whole reasons we created the Firebrands program at Braze, is because previously, before it was centrally owned, the same people got dialed up over and over and over again. We were just like, this isn't a good customer experience. It's not great for us to be having you do, you know, a reference call a week. That's ridiculous. You have a job.
Yeah.
And that's, the top references, I bet your top reference wasn't so far off of that, because that's where it can kind of bleed out to if you don't actually assemble a diverse array of advocates quickly. And then if that person goes away, what do you do? Like if that person takes a new job or just leaves the industry, you're all of a sudden have a huge key man risk. So that's something we try to get ahead of.
Yeah, that's really smart. I've experienced the same thing as well. So there's some good suggestions that came out of that discussion. So I appreciate y'all's input on it. I do have, this was touched on before in a way, but I want to just double click on it. I know this can be a little bit controversial as well, but should companies incentivize their advocates? So there's one thing to say, hey, if you refer business to us, we're going to give you a cut of it or pay you, right? That exists. And Andrew, you mentioned that was a little bit of the challenge, but what about incentivizing advocates? How can you do that in a way that doesn't send the wrong message, but still drives positive outcome? Will, do you want to kick this one off, and then we'll go to Andrew afterwards?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I struggle with the direct incentivization just because I do think that sometimes it feels a little transactional to our customers to do that. But I think that there's a lot of soft incentives that you can give to customers that actually are ultimately much more valuable. Those things about, putting their name out there in lights under a case study about how they transform results at a major enterprise brand, that's going to be a lot more impactful to their career and their life than, a $200 Amazon gift card. That sort of stuff makes a real impact in how they're able to progress their career. And I think kind of putting those incentives out there, as well as the incentives to network with their peers and those sorts of things, which ultimately should make their job easier, make their job more successful. All those kind of soft incentives can be incredibly valuable. So if you're talking about those things, absolutely, I think people should do it. And I think, the direct incentive program, it works for some brands and it doesn't for others.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned some of the other things that you mentioned. It seems like the case studies, like those stories that are, going to dive deep and talk about how they transform their brand, like that's hard to scale because it takes a marketing person to capture that and document it and come out with some content. But some of the other things that you mentioned around, bringing them into your Fire program and helping them network and do some of those things, and if that's like an exclusive group, that could be seen as something that can be scaled easily.
Yeah.
Andrew, how do you think about this one?
I really like the career enrichment angle of the Firebrand program. I think that's really, really creative. That's some cool stuff. We have to do this as part of our company because all of our customers' ROI starts with their reviews, and a lot of customers know how to get reviews. They've been doing it, so they'll run their own motion. But I'd say the majority of them, they look to us to help them launch it, and so we will give them guidance on how to incentivize, normally with an Amazon card. And our philosophy there is, you're asking your customers to do some somewhat heavy intellectual work, right? We're going to ask them for like 40 different data points on you, including maybe 10 like short form answers. So that's like a 10-minute commitment. I think that's worth, $25 Amazon. Where there's an integrity line that you can cross is, you are not, and this is in our terms, you are not allowed to say like, this money is for you to say this money is for you to give us a 9 or 10 rating. Like, that is against the rules, and we'll pull that review. All of that said, we did an acquisition about 1.5 years ago of a company called Advocacy, and they had a review automation tool where you feed in engagement data and a list of your users, and then they will go. They'll send emails from your own Gmail inbox to solicit reviews. I'd say the main reason why we made this acquisition was they showed that they had better conversion rates of doing it based on the engagement data than doing it with incentives. So they were doing this with $0 in incentive, and I think the psychology there is, if I'm using Braze, right now and you interrupt me by saying, will you review Braze? There's a much higher percentage chance that I will do that because I'm already thinking about it. I'm probably having a good experience and I want to tell somebody that, as opposed to if I'm not doing it, I'm not thinking about it, I'm walking my dog and you're like, I'll give you $50, just say some stuff about us on the internet.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that balance of, compensating people for their time and their effort versus their advocacy for you, that's a much more kind of organic relationship. I think that makes sense. And that's something that we've seen success with too in our review programs, because for what it's worth, we haven't cracked that code for driving reviews quickly and easily without incentives. So maybe we'll have to look at your advocacy program. So.
Nice. We just facilitated a sale on this webinar. This is fantastic. Okay.
Perhaps.
Let's move on to the next topic. They say that, customer experience is a new business strategy, right? Addressing customers at every step in their journey. Easier said than done. So a couple questions are going to come out of this, right? So how do you do this at scale? Before you answer that, right? Customers expect at a very minimum table stakes, what you said you were going to do for them. But how do you deliver something unexpected and delightful to them at scale during the customer journey? So 3 questions. Andrew, I'm going to want you to lead this one off. Can you share your general approach to this? Can you share any specific tactical examples that your team employs? And then, have you had any measurable success or failures that you've realized from this, the boosting revenue, expansions, new pipeline? How have you guys seen results out of that?
Yeah, I think in general, with tech today, with the way that it's built, you can get a lot of data on how your users are using the tool, right? And it's so much that I think your CSMs, like when you're hiring a CSM, they have to be a data analyst expert and a good storyteller, I would say. It's almost their job to dig into the seemingly boring data that no one else wants to look at and tease out some themes, because the customer is not going to do that. And that's one great way to delight the customer. How we're formalizing this, we're actually doing this right now. We're hoping to launch it within a month. Is we just call it quick wins and quick wins communications. So when people buy G2, like let's say they buy a grid report that shows they're number 1 in their category, or they buy some buyer intent data to show what companies are shopping them. The end goal is they want to close a deal because of G2 telling them something they wouldn't know otherwise, or giving them data they wouldn't have otherwise. But we can't expect that to happen in the first month. It's happened from time to time, but most of the time it's not. So what can we tell them in the first month? So we identified 9 things, and this is all driven by my wonderful implementation leader, whose name is Bliss Billingsley. She identified these 9 things that we can tell the customer at the end of day 30, the first 30 days in your contract. Here are 7 things that you can go brag about internally and to your customers. Here are 2 things that you're not done with yet. The first thing is always, did you drive 10 plus net new reviews to your profile in the first 30 days? Because if you did that, then you have a whole bunch more great VOC out there for everyone to see. Another thing is that when we're doing discovery on a customer, we want to know who are your top 3 competitors? Who do you want to look better than in the market? The second you pass one of those, we're going to tell you, and you probably don't expect us to do that. So when I think of delightful things, I think of that, and so we're systematizing that it's all going to go out automated, and we think that's going to be a pretty big change for the better for the company.
Awesome. That's really cool stuff. All right, Will, can you top that?
I don't know if I can top it, but I can add to it for sure. I think that tech two parts. First of all, on the CSM side, I think like taking what Andrew said and going a step further as well is like there's a real opportunity to take that first step of doing that data analysis for a customer and saying like, here's what I think you're getting out of our product, but can you combine that with the business metrics that you have on your side to really help me flesh out this story? Oftentimes that's something where we've seen concrete example from our side would be we see that you're driving 25% more push notification opens this month due to the fact that you interweaved your email program into your push notification program and replaced some of your push notifications with other types of, in-product notifications and things like that. When we talk about those fundamental changes, we can say you're getting increased engagement. Well, what is that, translating to in terms of dollars and cents for you? All of a sudden, we see a lot of excitement from our customers to actually fill out the rest of that story because they realize, oh, this is not only a story that can be told to me, but this is one I can tell inside my company. Getting back to the idea of finding that career advancement and benefiting themselves too. So that's one piece of it.
Yeah,
I think that.
It's nice.
Sorry.
Just a comment on that. It's nice that you guys start by doing the work up front for them. So it's like half the story's already written. They just have to add to it. So it's not like they're starting from scratch, which is more of a heavy lift than just adding context. It's smart.
Absolutely. And on the scale side of things, we're trying to do better about automation too, to point out those kind of successes to our customers, to show them when they're getting engagement rates that are above industry standards. So that way, and also sometimes when they're not having great engagement rates, so they can go and figure out what's working for them and do more of that and figure out why it's working. At the same time, if they are sending out an email that's just not landing with their customers for whatever reason, we're upfront about that with them as well, so that way they can go and turn that off as quickly as possible.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Or adjust it.
Yeah, very cool. I do have a question that came in from an audience member that's related to this topic. It was also related to one of the prior topics too, but I think it makes sense to include it here. Because I think it sets up, providing those unexpected, delightful experiences early on in the onboarding process. So for the 30-day progress check-in, do you suggest a CSM setting a meeting to review the results with the customer or provide some type of automated messaging? And I would imagine this varies business by business, but how do you guys think about approaching delivering that and the experience that it provides to the customer?
I think the human touch always helps if you can afford it within your business model. If it's something where your average contract value is high enough that you can, put a human touch on that and have a discussion about it, I think you'll probably get more real engagement with it, having a conversation about it and really learn about, the pieces behind that really matter. Was it that they didn't get to that last milestone because, they had a lack of development resources to integrate something and they are going to get to that a week from now, or is it going to be 2 months from now? Or is it something that they just tried it and they didn't get it? Those are two very different kind of conversations with your customers that'll tell you a little bit about where the kind of friction in your funnel is.
Yeah, I would say do the automation always, and then just like Will said, pick and choose where you want to overlay like a live CSM on top of that. One of our ideas is with these quick win scorecard notifications. If I'm the owner of G2 at a customer, that's, to Will's career points, like this, I want to make this something that's going to be on my resume. Like, I helped drive marketing at company X because I did this with G2. And if we can send you automatically a scorecard that's all green checks that shows all these amazing, numbers that you drove by day 27, then that's something easy for you to go forward around internally, which is great for you, but also great for us because it's driving your brand. So the more anyone can do that with their own company, it's great. It's building up that person's career by your brand, which is wonderful.
Yeah, it's also, I love that idea too, Andrew. It's also validating the purchase, really early on, again, when the excitement is still high and you're proving that, hey, you've gotten some stuff done and you should be proud of that. Now let's continue to take it to the next level so you continue to get value. I think that's really smart. Okay, so next we have, one more poll question, our last poll question for the day. And this is related to the last topic. My company delivers something unexpected and delightful during the customer journey that sets our brand apart. We're going to take 30 seconds on this one as well, and then we'll move on. Okay, perfect. We're back. So our last topic for today is about convincing leadership that they need to invest in an advocacy program. And so when you think about how to do that and what to ask them for, that's what we want to talk about now. It could be headcount, resources, budget, marketing support, whatever is going to make these programs successful. So first question to Will, what type of headcount do you need, if at all, and what should they do? Because, my first impression when I was thinking about this question is, well, this is just something that you tack on to something all of your CSMs do, and that'll be enough. How do you think about it?
Yeah, we tried that approach for a couple of years, and ultimately it didn't work for us.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the way I think it's just kind of problems at scale where, ultimately, the same kind of problems that Andrew talked about earlier, where those top references and advocates get hit over and over and over again. All of a sudden, that CSM becomes a huge bottleneck, and they're trying to do their job by getting that brand to use that software the best way they can and show them all the value of it. And if they keep getting hit up for it, to introduce them on a reference here and there, that can be very distracting to the rest of their kind of core business. And it's also something where I think, essentially administering an understanding of really your diversity of your advocates, understanding that if you have enough advocates in different roles and different departments that touch your software, make sure that you have different advocates at different, levels, C-level versus, manager versus director, having that understanding kind of takes some central administration. So that worked for a while, but for us, it just kind of broke down at scale after 4 or 5 years. And that's why we hired what we call this customer advocacy manager. Start out with 1 headcount. Next year, we're probably going to grow to 2. And that person really came in to take all of those kind of firebrands candidates, the people that were either previously doing these references or became interested in doing these after we kind of espoused those soft benefits that I talked about before, spending time interviewing and getting to know every single one of those. That way, if you do a couple a day, 20-minute interviews, that Rolodex of advocates starts to build up really quickly. And at the same time, they're then taking that Rolodex and making sure how can we translate that into more scalable assets as well, like G2 Crowd reviews and other online review platforms. That's really important to help make sure that sometimes, if you get the right person in, you might not need to have an in-person reference or to actually have a conversation, because you can now point to 20 online reviews that then espouse the same points they're looking to ask questions about. Is it working for the people in this industry? Is it working for people that look like me? So that was a huge benefit to us, and our CSM organization told us it was like a weight lifted off their shoulders when this happened. They were extremely happy about it because it let them focus on what they saw to be their core job.
That's interesting because it breaks the mindset of, the customer should have one point of contact, right? Which is usually the CSM, and now they're kind of like in sales, like you got the salesperson, you got the sales engineer, you got the CSM, and who's talking to them about what. So it breaks that, but it sounds like for you guys, it's a highly recommended, very efficient way of making this thing successful. So
that's a good
great
point.
To hear.
And it might work for us uniquely because we had already broken that by having a commercial account manager separate from our customer success manager, who is just there to strategize them about product usage, while the commercial account manager is there to handle all the commercials. So we had already had a breakdown of that wall. Maybe that wouldn't work for all the same for all brands that didn't have that breakage.
Yeah, but I do like the idea because I know CSMs are really, really busy and they're always fighting fires, or they're trying to figure out how to support customers. And I found in my experience, like, developing advocates is like the last thing on their mind, and it's a complete afterthought. Some are special in that they always have it. They always have their antenna up to it, but most of them, there's nobody's following a consistent process. So having a central team doing that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Andrew, how do you guys approach this at G2?
I mean, going off something that Will said, like, someone has to own it. There has to be a person who owns it. Now, they could have a dotted line into the CSMs to be one method of driving advocacy, which should never be the only one. But I see this with our customers, and when I'm getting early reports on how our onboarding is going, And when I don't see one owner, and when I see like, well, our strategy is to farm this out to the CSM team, I know that's a high percentage chance for a churn customer. I mean, that's anecdotally. But if I were talking to, leadership, especially sales leadership, I mean, there's a Forrester study that we reference all the time that asked a ton of B2B business buyers, so like the economic buyers, how do you buy? What do you look at to learn about your purchase? And it ranks all those things. I've got up on my screen right now. The first one is peer experience. Far and away is number one is peer experience. That's advocates. They're talking to advocates, right? Or whatever the advocate is. They're talking to anti-advocates. Then the number two is product ratings and reviews. Then noticeably, number 6 is customer case studies, which indicates like they don't care nearly as much about case studies as they do about reading other people's experience. The lowest thing is product demos. Like they care much less about you showing your, this is mind blowing. They care much less about you showing the product they're going to be using than they do about somebody else talking about it. And then the other thing I'd say is we look at this study from Aberdeen, and they look at companies that do have a customer voice strategy. That's what they call it. You can call it advocacy, and then that don't. And the ones that do, they've got an 87% chance that their customer retention will increase. Whereas if you don't, you've only got a 56% chance. So I think the data that like, if you are not doing this, you're missing the boat.
So I know we're coming up on the top of the hour, and I was going to ask one last question about it. And in part, you answered it. I want to see if you have anything else to expand on it and give Will a chance to comment as well. But if there were any CEOs or CFOs listening, what would you want them to know about the impact of these type of programs, these advocacy programs?
I just think that.
Andrew?
Oh, go for it.
Is that Will? No, Will, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, there are literally every quarter dozens of deals that come in through our gates that just wouldn't happen without the strength of our advocacy program. Whether or not that's, in-person sales references, case studies, which, I know is number 6 on your list, but some people really ask for, and if you can't demonstrate them, even as something to check the box, that's going to mark against you. And just to understand the kind of positive ethos we're putting out there in the community. And we also have our community program, which is full of these people. We have an online community. I didn't get to talk about that, but that kind of value from your advocates can't be understated. And it's something where I think, without those touch points, we just wouldn't have nearly the volume of business that we do today.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. Andrew, what would you have to add to this?
I think my last bit of data rapid fire was probably the answer to this. But the other thing that we like to say a lot is from that Forrester study, 90% of the respondents say, I'm going to do all my research, primarily driven by customer advocacies. And then if I'm interested in you at all, I will call you. So the days are gone when people do 12 vendor RFPs, and have those 12 run their first vision call, then cut it down to 6 who will do custom demos, then cut it down to 3 who will provide quotes, 2 on site, then 1. I mean, I was a sales engineer. I used to participate in those all the time. Nobody's doing that anymore. They're reading your reviews, and then if they're talking to you, that means they're interested, or they're trying to get, a quote to run up against your competitor. Either way, you have to have this,
Okay. Awesome. Really, really great discussion. So unfortunately, we're at the top of the hour, so we're going to have to sadly say goodbye, and we're going to have to wrap this up. But I want to offer a huge thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights and experiences with us today. Hope everybody found it useful. Again, keep an eye out. We will be sharing the presentation. We'll be sharing a recording of the video, as well as the results of the poll questions, most likely on social media. And so also, if you have any suggestions of customer success topics that you'd like to see User IQ host a discussion about, please feel free to email me or ping me on LinkedIn. Happy to do more of these in the coming months. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in, and have a great week.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.